What happened on the 14th of November?
I did something that, looking back now, I probably shouldn't have done, but I kept on playing.
Former football player of South Melbourne, 2017 Grand Final champion.
But just so happened to hit my head instead of the ball. But I couldn't remember anything that happened after that point in time.
Retired football player Alex Gummer.
It was probably one of the best decisions you've made, right?
Yeah, definitely. And also one of the most difficult because you're so vulnerable in this moment.
In order to make this podcast 1% better every episode, I need your help. Please subscribe, like, and interact with my content. You'll be helping me improve over time to make this podcast the #1 platform to talk about mental health in the sports industry. Thank you and enjoy this episode.
Alex, it's been 4 months since you've ended your career as a football player due to a concussion. How are you today?
Well, today I'm doing great. I've just come back from a holiday, so feeling super refreshed. But yeah, it's been, a challenge over the past 4 months of changing my identity as a football player and, how my life is going to look moving forward.
What happened exactly on the 14th of November, 2021?
I kind of remember it like it was yesterday, but also don't at the same time. I was playing for Thun and we were in the second league at this point, and I went up for a header. And as I went up for a header, a player from the opposition team wanted to control the ball, but just so happened to hit my head instead of the ball. I don't really remember too much about it, but yeah, not a pleasant experience.
So did you immediately know what it was?
It was in about the 89th minute, and we had used all of our substitutions. I was pretty sure that I had a concussion straight away afterwards, because I'd actually had one 3 months earlier, and so I could feel in myself that something wasn't quite right. But we were 2-1 up at this stage with less than a minute to play, so. I did something that, looking back now, I probably shouldn't have done, but I kept on playing.
So was it your decision?
It was absolutely my decision. I don't think we didn't really have doctors at that time at the club, so it was just a decision. Okay, are you okay? Yep, fine. And then I just played on.
Yeah, it's just a decision in the moment. But maybe, yeah, if you look back, obviously it's always you're smarter once you look back. So. Fair enough. So for the people who don't know what a concussion is, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, essentially it's a mild traumatic brain injury, which can often lead to a lot of symptoms afterwards, such as headaches, inability to concentrate. And, for each person, the symptoms could be a few days, or in my instance, it could be 2.5 years and counting. So yeah, it's something that can be quite serious.
That's definitely something we need to say at this point of the podcast. It's super individual. It doesn't take the same amount of time for all of the people or the people involved. So for you, it took a longer time than obviously for others. But yeah, just to make sure that we know that it's something super individual, as many different things in life, that it's also not really predictable, right? So it's just a matter of patience, and it's a process. So we're going to dive deeper afterwards. But for now, we want to get to know you a little bit better from a personal side as well. And my first question in that part would be, let's go a little bit back in time. And you can tell us how an ordinary day in your life looked like back when you were a professional football player.
Yep. Okay, so I guess I can go back to my hometown in Melbourne. And at this time, I had signed a fully professional contract and was receiving a wage for this. But at that time in Australia, it wasn't enough for me to just focus 100% on football. So I actually also had a full-time job. So as you can imagine, my day was quite hectic. So at the club, we would actually train in the mornings. So I would get up around 5:30, 6 o'clock, eat my breakfast, and then head to the training ground. We would do all of our prehab and then either have a session on the field or in the gym, or sometimes both. And so after this session, whilst everyone else was, heading off to a cafe, because we actually did have some professional players in the team at the time, I would jump back in the car, drive another half an hour, and then head to my 8 hours at my job. At this time, I was working at a pharmaceuticals manufacturing company, and I had graduated as a chemical engineer. And so, I was working in my field. And then after my work hours, I would go home, I would eat, sleep, and then repeat. Yes.
Wow, that sounds super, super intense. For how long did you do that?
So I played in the league from like 2013 in Australia, but I had different phases of time. So where I was studying or then working full time. So from about 2013 to end of 2019, just before I came to Switzerland, it was kind of this balancing act.
What about your private life?
What private life? No, I was fortunate enough that I was playing football, and I with a great bunch of girls, and so to be honest, I often, my social life was the football. Before training, we'd have a laugh, and sometimes I could squeeze in a quick coffee after training just to have that sort of side. But yeah, I'm fortunate enough that I had a great bunch of teammates, which are friends.
Nice. I wanted to ask you, what is passion for you? But I feel like you just explained it. I mean, like someone who takes all of this effort you did, there needs to be a huge passion for what you did, right?
Absolutely. And it's crazy looking back at it now. I never even questioned it. It was because there was no question in my mind that I had to get up to training and I had to go to work. I actually loved both of them. So for me, it wasn't hard work. It was just, just dedication and just enjoying what I did every day.
What was the best part about it?
I think one of the best parts is obviously Australia is quite a massive place. And so I think some of the best things were the away trips with the team. You would actually have to fly to places. So for example, we would have a game on the weekend in Perth. And so we would actually travel the day before because the flight's about 4 hours with a 3-hour time difference, which is crazy to think about. And then we would travel the day before, then play the game, and then either fly back that night or the next day. And for me, this was honestly incredible. Traveling almost every weekend with some of your best friends, and playing, the game that you love. I think this was honestly phenomenal.
You played more than a decade, and then at one point this passion is just gone, or you can't really continue. Maybe you wanted to continue, but your body just tells you to stop. What is it that you felt in that moment?
To be honest, it was actually fear, which was probably the main driver for me to stop. I had some sort of regression from some concussion symptoms, which were impacting my everyday life. I couldn't work properly, and I couldn't, do normal day-to-day things that I enjoyed. So for me, it kind of popped into my brain, what if I had another head injury? What would my life be like then? And I think that sort of put it all into perspective. And obviously it's really frustrating and sad that I didn't get to go out on my terms. But I can always look back on the career that I had and be proud of what I achieved.
Absolutely. And luckily you found a new passion. Can you tell us some more about that one?
Um, which passion are you talking about?
I saw some beautiful art pieces. So tell us some more
Yes.
about your new hobby.
Yeah, so I have now in my spare time just been looking on Pinterest and then identifying some little artworks that I liked, and I just thought, okay, I could easily buy this, but I have the time. Why not make it? And so that's something that I've been doing. I've been making sort of like 3D textured canvas arts, and so that one's hanging up now in my bedroom. And I actually had a, a friend in my old team. She asked me to make one, so that's my next project.
So if you need a new Canva, please contact Alex and she will help you out. How would you describe yourself outside of the sport now that the part of football is kind of gone?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think I'm still yet to discover all of myself outside of football because I've played since I was 5. So it is a massive part of my identity. And so one part that I'm, learning at now is that what is my life without football, or what can I do in other ways in football and to continue this passion. But personality wise, I think I'm the same whether or not I'm on a field or off the field. I'm quite a happy person, a bubbly person, love bringing people together, and yeah, happy to be the clown and to be laughed at.
If you could be someone else for one day, who would you be and why?
Taylor Swift. I actually just went to her concert recently, and I think that, she is such an incredible, like, strong woman, and who's living out her passion day after day, in front of like millions and millions of fans, and she's still, I guess, from my perspective, she remains grounded, and she's also, you can see that she has so much. She's so grateful for all of the support that she had. So I think that's something that I think, yeah, that's pretty cool.
What is something you wish people knew about you that most people don't know?
I was once on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Yes. And I got my question wrong and I ran off stage.
Oh wow. That's
Yes.
amazing. I didn't even know that. That's pretty cool. Okay.
Cool or embarrassing.
Yeah. Depends on the perspective.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely a good story to tell.
Yes.
To tell your friends and now all of our listeners. Amazing. So let's move on to some stress and pressure situations, because obviously as a football player you have them, but you can also transfer a lot of them into the private life. What is stress for you?
Ooh, stress for me, it's it's a multi-dimensional thing. I think obviously there's a lot of pressure involved with stress, and I think it can either be external pressure or internal pressure, and that, I guess, that you're not feeling as at ease as normal, and so you're either, a little bit like stressed about your thinking, or what's the next step to take. But I think stress is, yeah, it's not just a simple question.
Yeah, that's exactly why I asked you this. So that's okay. What about dealing with stress? Obviously, you've had a lot of stress situations during your career. Looking back, what was a tool or a routine that you used to calm yourself, for example?
It's a good question. I think I had different ways of coping. I think going for a walk, I think that's one like easy way that I was able to, quickly, okay, all right, put that on hold. Let's go and go for a walk and enjoy nature. I love getting outdoors and in nature. So I think this is one part which helped me keep grounded and reduce the stress for me. And then I think another outlet was like hanging out with friends for me. You could unload all of your pressures and your stresses. And I think, that really helps also put things into perspective as well. That you may be so self-absorbed of your stresses and your pressures, and that, speaking to someone else and then you can see what they're going through. So it kind of makes you think, okay, it's not just me, and this is normal. And then you can sort of relax a bit, I think.
Talking about it always is a good idea, I would say. So also in those kind of situations, definitely worth a try. Like Megan Rapinoe once said, let it and it will break you. Love it and it will make you. About pressure. Do you see pressure as a negative or a positive thing?
I think it can be both. I think too much pressure, and then I don't think that you can perform 100% to your best, because I think you're always stressing about external factors that perhaps you can't control. But other times I also found that I performed better under stress. If something, I think if you are stressed a lot of the time, you actually shows that you care about something. So for me, like if I walked in, as soon as I walked into a game and I wasn't feeling nervous or stressed, then I was actually worried. I'm like, okay, does this mean anything to me? And so I found that whenever I was nervous, it meant that, I'm going to step onto that field and give 150% for myself and my team. And I think, in those situations, the stress and the pressure was good for me.
Can you take us into one specific moment where you were like back, if you look back, whenever you want to take one of the moments that you felt like this was your biggest stress or pressure situation?
I can take you back to, I guess it was my first season in the National League in Australia, and I had missed out on selection for my home state team for quite a few years, and then I sought opportunities interstate, and so I went to another state and I got selected for a team there. And then we actually ended up by playing back in my home state against the team that didn't want me. And for me, I had never felt so much nerves and pressure at that moment. It was for me, I needed to show them that I know I could play at this level. But for me, I actually vomited twice before the game because I was so nervous. For me, it showed how much it meant to me. And then I actually went out and I played like an amazing game. And whilst we didn't get the win in this occasion, for me, like knowing how I played and I could feel so proud of my performance at the end. I think this was one of the most important moments of my career, I think.
That's crazy. Did you have that more times, or was it the only time that you were literally like vomiting before a game?
This was the only time that I had vomited before a game. Yeah, before I felt nervous, and I could feel the nerves, but this one was on another level.
Let's go back and talk some more about concussions. According to studies, 1.8 to 3.5% of all football injuries are concussions. There is more and more campaigns about like how to deal with it, like more protocols from the FIFA, for example, where they tell you exactly what to do, when to do it, and stuff like that. What do you think about those protocols, for example?
I think they are super important. I think, there's obviously a super amount of research that's coming out, about the impact on concussion, on, not only mental health, but also future, the future of yourself and your livelihood. So I think that these protocols are super duper important. I think there's still a lot of work to be done. I think in Australia, when I was playing towards the end of my career, they were implementing a lot of good practices in regards to concussions. So like pre-testing, and then, introducing concussion like substitutions where you can bring someone out and just fully assess them, because I think this is one of the biggest difficulties is, you know, if you take someone out for a short period of time, you're a man down, you know, and so there's a big, you know, whether it's an internal pressure from yourself wanting to play or from the coaching staff that they don't want to be one down if it's an important game. And so I think, you know, there's a lot of good practices, but I still think there's so much that can be done. I think in Switzerland, I don't think that there's anything that's been done, at least in the teams that I've had since I've been here for 4 years. So I think there's a huge amount of work to be done, but I think progress is being made.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I worked as a rehab coach with a lot of athletes, youth athletes as well, and I also worked with some with a concussion, and I didn't feel like it was enough a thing. It wasn't really in the heads of the people. So I feel like there's definitely some work to do. And I think there's some nations which are ahead of us, and they do have some great stuff that we maybe should take a look at and learn from them, and then improve what we have here. If we go back to your situation, what kind of signs and symptoms did you have in that moment? Do you remember?
Yeah, so immediately after I stopped playing, I sort of felt really, really dizzy. I mean, even during the game at the end, I couldn't really remember. I couldn't remember anything that happened after that point in time. And then straight after the game, I started vomiting. And that was pretty scary. I had called my parents, I think, afterwards, and I would be mid-conversation and then I would just forget what I was talking about. And I mean, it was pretty scary for me at this time because I was not in Switzerland for a huge amount of time. I didn't really have a huge support network. So yeah, not only was I worried, but also my parents. So luckily my coach took me to the hospital, and I had to stay overnight for observations. But yeah, so those were the first initial symptoms. And then after that, I had migraines. I had memory problems. I forgot whole people and whole conversations. I couldn't concentrate. I had problems with my menstrual cycle. I had huge mood swings. I had dizziness and collapsing. I was one time, I remember distinctly, I was walking through a supermarket and then I just started crying, and I couldn't for the life of me work out why I was crying. I just was so overwhelmed with the lights, the noise, and having to like dodge people and make decisions on the fly. So that was something when I realized, okay, all right, this has been going on for about 3 or 4 weeks now. This is not okay. I can't continue like this.
After that happened to you, obviously you tried some different treatments. Can you take us on that journey? Like what treatment did you do and what does it look like?
Yeah, so luckily I had some physios who recommended me to go to a specialist concussion center in Zurich. And so initially I had, you know, some diagnoses performed on, okay, what is leading to my symptoms? And the thing with the concussion is that it can impact so many different systems. So with my dizziness, it could have been caused by the vestibular system, which is like inner ear, and which may lead to balance problems. So I'd often I had to do this one test for me, which was quite crazy. They put me in this big harness, and they wanted to see, you know, where my balance problems were coming on. And so your balance, you know, it can take your eyes. So, you know, me looking, I know where I am. Also, you know, the knowledge of your body, like the proprioception, where your body is in time and space, and also your inner ear. And so what they would do was they would take away each system one at a time. And then once they took away my eyes from a position where I would be standing, I would just wobble and almost fall over. And so it was so crazy. At the start, I thought, why are you putting me in a harness? But then afterwards, I was like, yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah. Yeah. And then, so they had to do tests like this. And then they had to, devise a program for me, which, because of my concussion, was impacting so many different systems, they had to develop a program which would impact all of these systems at once. The problem with this is that currently it's not 100% supported as the best treatment. And so it's up to the insurance companies themselves whether they would like to pay for it. In my instance, it wasn't paid for. So I'm very fortunate that I have the resources to be able to do this, because this was important for my health. But for me, it really makes me so angry that some people may not have the resources to be able to afford this treatment, and so they're living their life in a blur. Essentially, this is how I would say. So yeah, this treatment was quite intensive. It was we would do twice a week 1 hour sessions, but these sessions, for a normal person, they would be like, okay, yeah, there's not much to it. But for me, it was so overwhelming and tiring that I needed to have, a 4 hour break in between these 1 hour sessions. And this was twice a week. And I had to travel all the way to Zurich for this. So this was quite an exhaustive but super, super worthwhile. The change in me has been phenomenal since I received this treatment.
So looking back, you would definitely tell other people to do it as well.
Yes, absolutely. It definitely changed. I went from, so essentially I couldn't work for like 8 weeks. Essentially, I was off 100% working, and I couldn't work at all. And then slowly I would work up to like 100% over like an 8-month period. And so from the start to the end, I couldn't remember anything in meetings, or I couldn't, remember that I'd had a conversation with someone, to now being able to live almost a normal life. So I think it's been life-changing for me.
So hopefully that treatment gets the credit that it deserves, and maybe also the insurances are willing to really invest in that, because it helps, as we've seen in your case. That's great. At one point, probably your injury shifted from physical to mental, because as you told us, it's been more than 2.5 years that you've been on this journey. How did that go?
Yes, it has been, as you mentioned, quite a journey. I think my journey with the mental side of things has been similar to my symptoms. It's been like a roller coaster. After my initial concussion, I actually had a period where I was super sad. I couldn't even explain how I felt. I was so heavy inside, and I'd never felt anything like that in my life before. And it was really super difficult. And so going from that, and then, having some highs of, okay, today I feel great. I feel super fantastic. I'm going to go out on a walk or a jog. And then the next day have so many hard symptoms and not being able to get out of bed. I think for me, times like that was really difficult for my mental health. So I think the physical and the mental was very much linked for me. This year, actually, when I'd finally made the decision to stop playing football, I actually had one of the worst mental slumps that I had. I was so upset. I felt so heavy. I felt like I was a burden to my partner, because I couldn't live the life that, we wanted to live because of these symptoms. And so for me, this was like one of the darkest periods in the concussion journey. I'm very lucky that I have, so many caring people around me, that I could talk to, and my doctor was super supportive and, offering me, any mental health services that I need. And again, I'm going to start seeing a psychologist again. I was seeing a psychologist during at the start because I was really struggling, but again, revisiting that journey and trying to, improve my mental health again.
Super important to do that. I think that, as you said, talking with people and also reaching out to a specialist once you feel like your family and friends can't help you, because I feel like there's a certain point until where people can help you, which also maybe they don't have some sort of an education. But then at one point, if you're still struggling, you just need to reach out and say, I'm not okay, please help me. And there's loads of people out there who can help you if you're willing to do it. So I feel like also in your case was probably one of the best decisions you've made, right?
Yeah, definitely. And it was also one of the most difficult because you're so vulnerable in this moment, and from myself, everyone knows me as the happy, bubbly person, and to not be that, I also felt like I was a burden to my friends and family, but that's like completely not true. All they want to do is see me happy. And, so by just opening up, they could see what I'm going through and be that shoulder to cry on, or also, advise me and give me the confidence to go and speak to a professional.
And at the end of the day, I feel like if you are not happy and you don't have that energy, you can't really give it to other people. So you need to look for you first, and then you can get back to the person you really are deep down, and then you can be that person again. But I feel like it's okay to accept that maybe in this moment you're not feeling great, you're not that person that you usually are, but then with the help of some specialists, you can get back to this person, also like get back the feeling that you would usually have. Was there something that kind of helped you to realize if you could maybe do an activity or go out for a jog or something, or was it just trial and error?
At the start, it was definitely trial and error. I think one super difficult part with being an athlete and dealing with concussion is that it's not like a normal injury. For example, when you have a muscle tear or a ligament injury, and you can feel in your body, okay, maybe I can push it a little bit more. And you definitely feel as an athlete that that's the right thing to do, push to get yourself better. But one thing I really noticed with the concussion is that I couldn't do this, because if I pushed myself too hard, I would have a relapse and I couldn't leave the bed for 2 weeks. So this was like one massive learning curve of learning where my limits are, learning to listen to my body. What are my signs that, maybe I shouldn't do this? But also I was super fortunate to have like an amazing partner who I think knew that I was someone who wanted to push really hard every day. And so he was kind of just being like, should you do that? Like, and just making me question it a little bit and being like, yeah, probably not. I probably shouldn't do this. And so I think having that guidance also helped me learn about myself and where my symptoms are and where the limit is and what I can push and what I cannot.
So do you feel like you also kind of discovered yourself from a different side?
Yes. I think I also had to change who I was a little bit. I think, and that all comes also part of the identity with football. You always, as an athlete, push. But now I'm not like this. So it's okay to change and it's okay to go at a different pace. And so I think that's one important thing.
we are staying with the mental health topic, and one player from the US national team, Carrie Recaro, reached out to the league, and she was actually able to secure a mental health policy. And it was a huge thing because back in the days, if a player had an injury in terms of a mental injury, they weren't paid. During that time that they weren't with the team, they weren't paid. But now with this mental health policy that allows players to take up to 6 months paid leave if recommended by a psychologist or psychiatrist. And this is believed to be the first of its kind in US pro sports. What do you think about if you hear something like this?
I think it's great. I think there's been a huge shift in, the mental health stigma. I think previously it was something that was, avoided talking about, but now I think it's changing, and having these policies like this enables people to actually, to check if they actually are okay, and to have the confidence to put themselves first, because they don't have to worry about, okay, what if this next paycheck isn't going to come in? I think that's like super important, and I think it'll prolong the careers of many athletes. I think a lot of athletes have had to retire too early from burnout, and so I think that this will help reduce this, and so that we can enjoy watching these players play for a lot longer time.
Absolutely. I think that's exactly what you mentioned about the pressure you have to kind of, before that, they knew, if I'm not going to play, I'm not going to earn money. So how will I be able to supply my family, or how will I be able to live my life that I usually live? And now with this policy, I think that's a great step towards also opening up, like giving people the opportunity to talk and to be honest with the people around in the club and say, hey, I'm not feeling great. I need to reach out to someone. I need to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist to talk about my mental health. And I think that's something we could definitely see as a goal also for us in Europe or in Switzerland, for example, because I haven't heard about something like this here in Switzerland. So I feel like there's a lot of good things happening in the US at the moment in terms of like um, in terms of policies, protocols. And I also have another example from, I was actually also talking about this with Serena, with my fellow podcast guest. And it's called Create the Space. It's also a US national team member, Naomi Girma. And she was actually the one who kind of who launched this campaign. And just in January, they had the first mental health retreat for players. And from all of the different clubs, the players were able to come and join this retreat. And they had loads of different techniques they looked at. They had specialists there which presented different tools they could use, because it's super individual and you kind of need to find your tool or your routine that helps you to become more aware and to be able to kind of deal with that situation. So I feel like that's literally a great thing that happens. What tool, like in terms of mental health, do you feel like you have a tool there that you used that helped you in those situations?
Yeah, I think at the start of my career, when, I didn't really know about these mental health tools, I didn't really have anything that I necessarily did. But, throughout my career and learning about myself, I think, definitely having some mindfulness, I think that's a super important thing. I personally could never really have the patience for meditation. So this one wasn't for me. I scratched that one off the list. But having this mindfulness and having some gratitude and trying to see what I'm grateful for, I think this really put a lot of things into perspective. And whilst I couldn't really have the patience for for meditation, I think, focusing on breathing. I think, in times of stress, just taking like a minute or 2 minutes to just focus on, big, deep breaths. I think that helped me quite a lot.
How would a usual mindfulness session look like?
I had in Australia, we had the Professional Players Association, the PFA. They often did some workshops, and they gave us some tools and like a little booklet to demonstrate mindfulness. Write down 3 things that you're grateful for, or what exactly are you feeling, and things like that helped put everything into perspective and help calm my mind.
So that was something that happened in Australia like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Or even before.
Yeah.
Did you have something similar to that here in Switzerland as well?
No, not here in Switzerland at this moment. We had, I think at eBay, when I was playing at eBay, we had a mental coach, and I think it wasn't quite delved in. Maybe it's changed now since I was there, but they were just working more along the motivation side of things, but it wasn't necessarily mindfulness and speaking about mental health or anything like this.
Was it once a topic in a locker room, like literally you saying, I don't feel great today, can I talk with you about my mental space, or never?
In my history, probably not. It's not that I didn't feel that I could speak to my friends. I think that I had a really good relationship to them. I think I just had my outlets outside of football. And to be honest, football was one of my outlets when I was feeling, stressed from work, that as soon as I head onto that field, because I loved the game so much, it would like forget all of my passion, all of my worries or fears. So that was sort of one thing. But then I guess when I was having problems on football, like maybe I wasn't playing, or then I would, speak to my friends outside of football, but I guess not really so much in the locker room, as per se.
Was it maybe also because you were kind of scared that you wouldn't play if you would tell the coach, for example, that you weren't feeling great?
I guess probably some fear at that point. I think, and some of the teams that I was playing, and I wasn't a starter that would play every week. And so for me, that would have a huge fear of, if there was one thing wrong with me, that I wouldn't play. So definitely. I think also in Australia at the time, we had like 1-year contracts. And so it was super, you didn't really have any stability or anything like this. So you didn't want to bring that sort of side into the game. But I think now in Australia, they've definitely, lots of players are on 2-3-year contracts. And I think that hopefully will open the doors to being more comfortable speaking about your mental health.
You're probably still in contact with some of the players. Do you know if they do have some sort of mental health, like coaching or workshops?
I definitely think if it was happening 5 years ago with the PFA, I definitely think it will still be happening today. The PFA has been doing lots of great things in the female space for standards, like medical standards, and like also just professional standards. So I definitely think that something is happening still in Australia with those things. Yeah, for sure.
If you had one wish for the future in terms of mental health in sports, what would it be?
I definitely think having, the safe space to be able to talk about your mental health, and I think having, these programs in place. I think having those, I think that's one huge wish with regards to mental health. But from a selfish, not really a selfish perspective, but from my own experiences, one of the big things that I would love is to have way more awareness and seriousness about concussions, because I think the impact of them can be really, really massive. And so I think we need to take more care with protecting our brains.
Definitely. Do you have a specific idea in your head how that could happen?
To be honest, I think a lot of it comes down with research and also more funding. I think in the women's game, it's been, you know, a huge growth period over the last few years. And so I think with this growth, there's obviously more money in the game, and there can be a lot more resources going to these sort of programs, and more awareness. And also I think, you know, education for the players. Definitely. I had one player in my team recently, and she had a concussion, and I sent her some resources just telling her, don't risk it, don't play. But they still played, you know? So I think hopefully with more education and from, you know, not just the players, but also the health professionals, I think that, you know, we can really take this issue more serious. And so and hopefully reduce, you know, any potential long-term effects that can happen.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a thing that we need to really be aware of those kinds of situations and educate the players. I would even start from the youth, because I think it can happen anytime. And the earlier they know about it, the better it should be. Also, when they get older and they know how to act, and all of the stuff should be educated as well, because most of them, for example, at Thun, they're not professional, so they just come after the job and they do their job as a coach there, but they need to know that as well. So I feel like there's definitely some work to do, and let's hope that in the near future there will be some changes. We have a tradition on the podcast where the last guest leaves a word for the next guest, not knowing who it will be leaving for. And the word left for you is self-confidence. So please just tell us something about self-confidence. What do you think, or what do you connect with it?
For me, it's been a huge part of my career. From being told that I wasn't good enough to get into the teams back in Melbourne, to have the self-confidence to say, you know, I believe that I can do this. I believe that I can play at this level. You know, I paid for my own flights. I paid for my own accommodation to travel to trial for this team, just because I knew that I could do it. And by having this self-confidence, and enabled me to step out of my comfort zone, to go to a new place and, you know, give my all, to be selected and to play in this team. I think it's really, you know, it's shaped who I am as a person, and as a player, you know, having this self-confidence to go, you know what, if you don't believe in me, you know, I believe in myself, I can make opportunities elsewhere. So that's been, yeah, super important in my career.
Alex, thank you for sharing your story. I'm sure there are a lot of athletes out there who can relate, and they now know that they're not alone, that there's people like you out there who did this journey, and not a short journey, unfortunately. But I hope you're feeling better as soon as possible, and you're going back at life, and you're finding new passions. And I admire your energetic way, and that you're always with your positive mindset and just looking in the future. And thank you for your time. I appreciate it a lot.
Thanks for having me.